Morning, everyone. I'm going to keep my remarks extremely brief because I'm looking at the clock and the agenda and want to make sure that we stick to our schedule. But I wanted to thank Bernie and Ray Rickman for their inspirational words. And just one comment in my own reflection in thinking about today is that we know that all of you signed up to do a year of service. You are unlike many of your peers who are sitting home today, not sure what they're doing, right? Maybe they are doing a little shopping, maybe they're on an extended holiday vacation, what have you. But you all as AmeriCorps members signed up to do a year of service. And by definition of that, you are a community leader, which Bernie alluded to. So I look around this room and think about what has connected us all, even though we have a rich diversity of life experiences, we're all AmeriCorps members, right? That doesn't mean we think alike or we act alike, but we all are committed to making our communities better. So we thank you from the Commission. You are part of a national movement, whether you want to be or not. You are part of a rich tradition of service from the early 90s, 1994, which also coincides with the Corporation for National Community Service being the federal agency to honor Dr. King through a day on, not a day off. So we have a lot to do today. Be thoughtful, reflective, active participants, which is just as important as rolling up your sleeves every day like you do and doing community service, right, your direct service. We talk a lot about at the office that how important it is to be reflective participants, because if we're not thinking about our service, our impact in the community, impact on ourselves, it's a real lost opportunity. So we want to make sure that we're reinforcing this message of reflection because it's so critical to our work and thinking about the so what of it all.
I think AmeriCorps is really great in that all of the corps have a diversity of people, and then with that diversity, you would go into areas or populations that maybe you haven't gone to before. It's kind of this exposure that we have to one another that is necessary because of our times. We are having this kind of implicit gentrification. It's like there is white flight. There are more white people going to the suburbs because the cities are so bad. And part of that then is education, how that affects education, that all the schools that are white are going to have a better education, and all the urban schools that are mostly people of color are going to have a crappier education, which is then how AmeriCorps ends up being at that school. You know, it's kind of this interesting system, I guess. And so to have exposure to a variety of people, whether it's within your own corps or whether it's your corps and the area that you serve in, it kind of gives a better idea of what is and what could be for either the youth that you're with. Because if you are surrounded by the same people constantly, if you are white and you only see other white kids and you only see white adults and you only see achievement, then most likely your trajectory is going to be as such. Rather than if, the same thing if you're in a poor, low-income neighborhood, primarily of people of color, and you only see welfare, and you only see food stamps, and you only see like shit everywhere, then that's what you're going to expect. And so there's this whole like intersection of like class and identity and education and all of these things. And then
we chose education by virtue of the fact that many of us work in schools. And we tried to relate it to our 6 steps of nonviolent social change, which was not easy to do, and I got picked to do it. So. Our action steps is mostly what was important to us and how we could, mostly information gathering, we sat around and discussed what steps we thought would be workable on a small basis that were allowed. We picked positive role models who work in the classroom. We felt well, that's what we could relate to the children or to give them something. It was to act right, number one. The second one was coming and checking in on them when they're out, give them a call, maybe a note to the parents, something like that. Something that would show them we had concern for them. They tend to have much concern for us. They miss you when you're not there. If you're sick, they notice it and ask you about it. So this would be reciprocal. Good way to relate to the children. Listening to them. A lot of them are young, their parents, haven't got the time to listen to them perhaps, whatever it may be. So it's a very important thing is, as they tug on your shirt or whatever, and want to tell you something, listen. Doesn't hurt to listen. If you, like me, I can't hear well, so I just go yes, 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 or something like that. And it works. And the other is educating the parents as much as we can, how important, reading is to them. So the same things we're trying to do, listening to your child, different things like that.
The issue is also education, specifically educational inequality. We came up with some action steps. There are 7 here, but some of them are interrelated, so I'm going to combine. The first one is the schools. Some of the schools are old, some of them are falling apart, some of them no longer really meet any sort of health and safety standards at all, and that we need to have health inspections and enforcement of those standards for the schools, so we don't have schools that have no accessibility, no drinkable water falling down ceilings with asbestos in them, things like that. Going kind of along with that is that the schools need more funding for pretty much everything. There's not enough funding going into the schools, so they can't do a lot of the things that they need. The next thing is, I'm actually going to combine the next one and the last one because they both relate to standards. We need standards that are more standardized. They're called standards for a reason. And we need to enforce them. One of the suggestions that my group came up with was to redraw the school districts and make them held accountable for keeping the standards the same across the state. Right now we've got state standards, but different localities are able to adjust the standards. We want them to be able to be more standardized standards at all. And that people should be held accountable for this academic and attendance standards. And then the final point, or the final 3 points that are kind of related, is to have more community, teacher, and parent involvement opportunities. Get the entire community involved and engaged in the education system. Not just parents, not just teachers, not just students, but like businesses, elected officials. Get everyone involved and engaged so that they understand how important this is, and so the kids have more resources in the education system also. And then also supporting teachers and parents. Parent education opportunities. Parents who don't speak English have a hard time being involved in the school system, so why not give them opportunities to be more involved either by learning English or in their language, in their native languages. And also supporting the teachers with training and evaluation and assistance. I think that's good. That's it.
The problem that our group came up with, or the social issue, was the standardization of American public education and emphasis on test scores.
Good one.
And one solution we came up with is stop tying resources, specifically funding, to the test scores. Our process that we came up with into trying to solve this issue was to do research on like where is money going, how is it being used, and educating the teachers, like helping teachers understand unique student needs to help them improve, and also engage parents and the community, and explain the requirements under the No Child Left Behind Act, and also organizing phone calls to Congress to call to repeal the No Child Left Behind.
We had a really rich discussion in our group, and I think the one thing that we all agree on is that there are many, many problems that we're all facing in our schools and neighborhoods that we serve. But we decided to come to the consensus that the basic needs aren't being met in the communities and the schools that we serve. So sometimes the water isn't drinkable, the food's rotten, school's not accessible for handicapped students, things like that. And in order to fix that problem, something so broad, is that we need to educate a lot of the parties involved. So the neighborhoods that we work in, the legislators, the government, everybody needs to educate on what's going on in the schools and then also on how to fix those problems. And that involves a lot of communication. So speaking to the necessary folks who are in charge can make the decisions that help us, but also speak to the people around that can also help spread the news. Put our money and resources into it. So like Ray said earlier, literally spend money on the cause, but also put your time and service into AmeriCorps programs and other programs that are helping the neighborhoods, schools that we work in. Encourage the community, your friends, your peers, etc. If you have a pocket of friends that aren't really adjusted to what we're doing here in these programs, educate them on what you do and help them, and ask them if they want to volunteer and if they want to serve. And finally, get the youth and children involved. We had a really good one that the children, when they're really motivated and excited about something, they'll rally and they'll help out themselves. And when the children are excited, then the people that are working with them and for them will get excited as well.
So our group talked about responding to the problems that we face as a whole community. So really with the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr., the creation of his beloved community, we just want to get everyone to work together. Because we're all going for common goals. We all want kids to be successful. We all want to fight hunger. We all want to, promote well-being for everyone in the community. So one of the things we talked about was AmeriCorps as a whole. So really taking all of the great programs that America offers and finding out, which people they touch and which parts of the community they're involved with, and really integrating them together so that we work together for that common goal and really try to achieve creating that beloved community. So
our group came up with this idea. I call it a $5 word. It's called systematic oppression and also indifference. So when people talk about systematic oppression, it sounds like something I would learn from a liberal arts college, right? So it's the idea, not to bash liberal arts college, it's the idea that, let's say there's an unreasonable wage cap for a working mother with 2 children for a certain benefit, whether it's WIC or unemployment insurance, and they might not meet that criteria, even though on the outside, somebody would say, wow, that person really deserves our attention and they need that resource. But sorry, you make more than $20,000 a year, which really isn't enough to raise one person, let alone 2 children. So we came up with the idea of, it's really simple, holding our politicians accountable through letter writing campaigns, calling the mayor, like our speaker told us to do this morning, and just these simple everyday things, and along with indifference, making people interested in something. For instance, my little niche in the community is veteran advocacy, and that really drew me into the world of politics, because you can't do a lot of things without getting involved with politicians and by an offshoot like nonprofits like AmeriCorps, which is a great program. So to sum it up, make people care, make them less indifferent, and fight systematic oppression.
Our group came up with the title Social Education Transformation just because every issue that we came up with fell into that category. And so our 7 steps of action would be information gathering. It would be to determine level of resources needed and to look at effectiveness and structures in place, looking at all the levels of federal, state, local, and to just not conform to what's happening now, because we know we have Barack Obama as our president, but there's more to that needs to be done. For education, is for us as AmeriCorps members to become knowledgeable of the resources that are offered so that we can offer it to the community, because we found that there are a lot of resources, but a lot of the communities here in Rhode Island don't know about the help that they can get. So I'm going to give it over to Rosa.
Okay, and I'm going to talk about negotiation, which is formalizing the views that we need to get done in the community, whether it's gathering local communications, non-profit organizations, politicians, personal commitments. We have to put yourself in somebody else's shoes in order to understand, in order to have a win-win situation, beneficial for everyone. Direct action is actually doing what we want to do in order to help the communities in terms of social education and finding the resources to help those families that need the resources. And the last one is reconciliation, in which is transform the society by ensuring the sustainable change and also ensuring that the laws are being enforced, because we can have as many laws as you want, but if we don't make sure that they're enforced, then we have to make sure that they're there. And thank you.
Who came up with education? And education is a broad topic. Everything, somehow you gotta be educated somewhere. And we thought of academics. And we didn't specify what we wanted to, really. Well, so to gather information, we're gonna start with on-site visits and watching classes, taking surveys from the students and administrators and teachers and stuff. Literature reviews and research, needs assessment, knowing the tools available, because we can't supply what we don't have, and specifying and defining what we want. To educate, we're going to utilize media, town hall meetings, grassroots organizations, PTA and PTOs. Step 3, personal commitment. Accurate position descriptions, like telling people what they could do and how they could help. Mission statements. Common defining goals. And student participation. We gotta get everyone to understand that everyone plays a role, and without one person, we might fail. Identify team, step 4, negotiation. Identify team and stakeholders, meeting representatives of other perspectives and sides. And direct action, if negotiation fails, we're going to reevaluate, see how we failed and why we failed. Reach out to local political leaders, reach out to parents, understand why the negotiation failed. Phone, mail, and door to order. That's all we're going to reach parents. We're going to build our numbers, get bigger forces.
So our group talked about a variety of different issues. We brainstormed like everything from education reform to environmental issues, and we basically summed up that our most pressing global issue today is the failure to take responsibility for understanding other perspectives and acting in the best interest of society as a whole. So that sounds really abstract, but what we thought about, is people tend to think of they tend to think of themselves as like an I instead of thinking of community as a we, is that they either don't think that they can be a part of solving a bigger issue, or they don't have access to being part of an issue. So the way we thought of it was, first we want to explore why people don't take action, why there's that attitude. Is it, again, lack of access, or is it like the attitude that I don't think I can dedicate my time, I don't think I could actually be the one to help solve that issue. So we wanted to first explore the why behind why this happens, and also to explore the outlets in which we could inform people that they can be part of solving a bigger issue. Then for education, we said we want to embed civic engagement in all realms of education. We think that is the best method to get people thinking about bigger issues. Then we said that we want to actively seek to understand and be informed. We said that becoming an informed, becoming a role model for this issue can be all realms. It can be in the field of education, it can be in the field of politics, and just becoming a role model for actively becoming a role model for being engaged is the best way to get other people engaged. And we said for action, we said peaceful protesting, speeches, and one of our biggest ones was to recruit, to get people on board to whatever issue it might be. And for our last one, we said to be prepared to fail, but still note small victories. Keep going.
A ton of different things, and we kind of came across that our issue is we have so many issues, and we didn't really know which one to really go off of, so we decided to just go off of issues as a whole. And so kind of the first step is find an issue that you're passionate about, or just find an issue, and it doesn't even have to be just one issue. We talked about sometimes issues come across just as they come. So from there, we decided that once you find an issue, just to do something, just to find something that you're really good at, and to just go for it. And from there, we traveled from like word of mouth. We talked about different things with technologies of traveling and how that can do something. We talked about how word of mouth can do something, but just doing something that you're really good at and passionate about, and from there, it can do something. That kind of went with what we were talking about, loving your enemies with MLK. We talked a little bit about how the speech could be an all or nothing movement, and that kind of brought up the discussion that is it really an all or nothing, or is everyone's individual all or nothing something different? So we wanted to go off of just getting your own something that's a little all or nothing, and even though you might not have something as huge as a civil rights movement, it didn't start as a huge movement, it started small. So from there, just finding something you do really well, and even collaborating with other people that do other things really well, and from there, it can make something huge.
Basically, when we were discussing everything in our group today, we were asked to come up with what we thought was the biggest societal issue that we could see. And we came to the conclusion that there is no one biggest issue. It's a term referred to as intersectionality. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it basically explains how different issues in society intersect and cause problems in other areas of society as well. So we obviously talked about education and how education is a huge issue in our society. There's lack of it. There's education that's not adequate. There's a lack of access to education at all. And then we went on to how things like mental illness is also very much not paid attention to enough. And we talked about how poverty factors into all of that. And then we talked about how stereotyping and marginalization affects all of those things as well. So we really just kind of had a really long discussion about the different things that factor into what makes the bigger issues of society. And in terms of action steps, we touched on what we could do, but we also talked at length about what we were doing as AmeriCorps members. And I brought up that we are actually doing the steps 1 through 5 on this little green piece of paper that we got. We're doing a lot of information gathering just by being at meetings like this and going to work every day and being at our sites. We are educating people every day. AmeriCorps is a personal commitment that we signed a contract for a year to commit our time to service and to make sure that we're helping our community as best we can. We do negotiation at our jobs every day, and we're taking direct action every day. And in terms of the reconciliation aspect of it, we talked about, can there really ever be true reconciliation for these societal issues that we have? And a lot of us said that they're so big at this point that it's going to be really hard to get there, but it's definitely possible. And once we do get there, then it becomes a matter of maintaining that reconciliation, making sure that everything stays all right, and that we don't get back to where we are now.
We did talk about a lot of what everyone else talked about, but one thing I'm going to jump in on as far as a social issue is hate crimes and bullying. When we talked about the 6 steps of nonviolent social change, and we discussed within our group where we would start, and one thing that was brought up often was educating the students, perhaps creating a curriculum that talks about cultural diversity, different types of diversity. In addition to that, we talked about the second principle, beloved community, and how we realize how much interdependence affects our community, and if we realize how much we need each other, it will then affect, it'll create a ripple effect for the students that we work with, people that we work with. So that's the gist of what we discussed in Team 30.
So basically we touched upon what every other group touched upon, which was education. Education we felt was basically like an umbrella that wraps up all the other issues that we're dealing with in society. One of the issues that we felt was a pressing issue in our schools is social promotion, which is basically promoting students who are not prepared for the next level of education, but who are still promoted to the next level because of policies that have been created. We said that education is definitely one of the most important issues to focus on, because without education, the other issues that we're dealing with cannot be resolved, because it is through education that we learn how to learn from our mistakes and we overcome them. So some of the steps that we focused on were step 1, which is information gathering. We said we needed to gather information about what's happening in our schools. Education, step 2, we really felt that it was necessary to educate the community on the issues with education, with the inequalities that students are dealing with in certain communities. Another step that we focused on was step 4, which is negotiation. We spoke about the importance of educating our policymakers on the issues that are going on in our schools. We felt that there's a lot of inequalities that students in the schools that we work in are facing.
And one of the other big things that we talked about at the end, and this goes just beyond education, it covers everything, is that we're all here for kind of both the same reason and for different reasons. I think that everybody has personal stakes in this. You're here for some particular reason that made you want to give a year of your life to do this. And so I think the important thing is when you're in a group, it's so important to work with a group, and it's also really important to let your voice be heard and talk about what matters to you, because that's the only way anything is going to happen. So don't be quiet, be loud, talk about what you care about.
So we started off with the different society issues, and we just started labeling them off. So we had bullying, insensitive use of language, underserved and impoverished people, education, ignorance, and equality. So we were like, all right, let's pick one of them and run with it. So we went with education, but then we were kind of, is education the problem or the solution? We realized it was a little bit of both. But we went more for the lack of holistic teaching, going past the textbook knowledge. And so for our information gathering, we had statistics, staying involved, asking students themselves, gathering facts and causes, and then we focused on like K through 12. So it was, being in there and actually physically either observing the information or just gathering through data. For education, we had the youth and parents involve the community, teaching those life skills, and incentives to get people involved. So we talked about PTA meetings with having, maybe providing dinner for those that it might be a little burdensome to find a babysitter, not be able to come, use that time out of work. So ways to get them involved. For personal commitment, it's continuously communicating and informing. We are, as AmeriCorps, dedicated to serving, so it was a way that we just keep chugging. You gotta keep doing it. For negotiation, we went through what kind of resistance we could come up against. So we have the Board of Education, teachers unions, funding. We need money, but where does it come from? Students and teachers. So we went through the different ways that we're met with adversity, but how we can kind of work through it. We went over some really great direct action programs. We have programs from Hope High School and the Met that we talked about, independent projects that we do. Us as AmeriCorps, we're out there doing it. Direct and transitional services that help people go from classrooms to the real world, and creating sustainable systems so that we can keep that process moving along. And For reconciliation, it was just, you can physically look at the data, or we can celebrate those little victories that we have. One of the girls in our group talked about a student who didn't like vegetables eating carrots. It's an awesome little victory. So, yeah. That's it.
My group talked about women's rights. Woo! From a lot of different things about just wage differences all the way to reproductive rights. So part of the information gathering for that is to actually calculate different wage earnings between men and women. The reproductive rights knowledge that people have, actually talking with women about what they want, what they think is important to them, and even consulting other countries about laws and different things they have in effect and how that works for them. Part of our education is to mainstream certain literature and articles that are out there about women's rights and women's health. We have creating school programs, spreading knowledge to our youth, encouraging parents to talk to their children. We have care and concern from teachers. So it's not enough that it's just a school program, but have teachers that actually support that and are open to talking to their students and putting women into government. Some of our personal commitments can be talking and starting conversations with everyone. So people in this room that you don't know that are strangers, to talking to your family and friends, just everyone. Actively speaking out, so if you hear someone saying something that is maybe sexist or is not nice, instead of just being like, that kind of sucks, I'm just gonna think about that to myself, actually tell them, be like, that's not nice, I don't like what you're saying. Get the conversation started. And of course, analyzing yourself. What things are you doing that are maybe sexist or, different things? Like, hey, you guys. Not all of you are guys, I shouldn't say that. So, yeah, critique yourself. Part of the negotiation that we had is just openness to facts and the opposing views, and having open discussion with both sides. Direct action, being active in electing women into the government, and adapting women's rights into core education. So instead of just having like one random little program, actually involve it in the history classes that you teach and different things like that. And petitioning and protesting and things like that. For reconciliation, make sure that laws and missions are followed through appropriately, review and assess progress, and maintain an attitude of equality. So, yeah, that's it.